The big questions. Why are we here? Why do organized structures emerge from what we think of as chaos and condense into what we see as organized, coherent forms? Why do some of these coherent structures, like biological forms, develop intricate adaptive renewal strategies that maintain their coherency over time in the face of antagonistic forces that would otherwise destroy that integrity? Why does what we experience as consciousness, self-awareness, agency, and choice rise out of a seemingly deterministic sea of relational causes and effects? How did formal, descriptive, and prescriptive communication systems like math, verbal languages, and so on emerge from seemingly non-coherent, meaningless structures? If we humans are capable of carrying out intentional acts with specific purposes, how did this come about? And does this same capacity exist on other scales? Why do organized structures like ourselves use intricately specific blends of difference and self-similarity to nourish the coherency of our form over time? In other words, where did we come from? Why is the cosmos in the shape it's in now? And where are we going? Entelechy is a philosophical term sometimes used to identify what it is that differentiates mere matter from living bodies, if there even is such a distinction. It's a proposed vital principle of nature that is what shapes the development and functioning of organized systems from otherwise chaotic relationships. It attempts to answer, or at least identify, the thing that pulls order from chaos. That is, if we assume chaos is disorder. The point is, the evidence is not all in, and we're not even sure if we're asking the right questions. So the jury's still out on this curious and profound state of affairs we find ourselves both in and of. If we want answers, we must continue to search, and sometimes this means searching for the most valuable and meaningful questions. It appears both impractical and unrealistic to expect that we could answer any of the big questions with a reasonable degree of certainty. But we can make an effort to cover some of the basic tools we have to perceive. We can then couple this understanding of the observational lens at our disposal with what it renders when we look across the broad landscape of this thing we call nature, and from this, we can identify some inferences and use this to start asking the questions that will render the most significant benefit. In relation to human knowledge, there is a spectrum of usefulness when it comes to information. If we assume a given description of a natural process is accurate, the information it provides affords us observational awareness. This can offer us some limited capacity to navigate more effectively. Repeated observations can be a foundation to recognize patterns and make inductive inferences, a sort of where there's smoke there's fire kind of vision. Observational awareness does have some potential pitfalls. We can and do easily conflate causes and effects, and out of that error, we can and do forge myths about each other and the world. We sometimes elevate these falsehoods to the status of fact with disastrous consequences. The point is, observational awareness does have value, but its value is limited and comes with potentially significant downsides to our vision. So something more reliable, if that's possible, would be preferable. Beyond the scope of observational awareness, some forms of knowledge provide a foundation for what we could call operational awareness. Newton's law of motion are an example of this. They go beyond reporting and educated guesses based on experience and produce a framework to reliably predict outcomes. Operational awareness stands on a more solid foundation than observational awareness, but it also comes with some necessary assumptions, such as the assumed validity of our senses, and some limitations on what it can reliably illuminate, so it does not render a complete picture either. If we boil down our capacities to see with certainty to their essence, we can know that something exists. But beyond this core, we have to weave some assumptions into the mix in order to get anywhere. So asking the question, what can we know with certainty, must be answered with a resounding, not much. But we can and do use the currency of meaning to cultivate our experience. So perhaps this is the place to start, even though it's uncertain ground and begs some fairly significant questions, like what is the value of certainty and how valuable is certainty to what we experience as life? If we gauge the value of information on a spectrum from observational through solidly inductive patterns like seasons, to predictive operational information like that produced through Newton's laws, we see that the more capacity a packet or packets of information have to assist us to reliably navigate toward developing and maintaining our full potential, the higher its value is in relation to us. In other words, information related to and effectively applied toward the realization of our full potential is of utmost value. This makes understanding the waters of reality in which we live and of which we are a worthy pursuit. One of the core concepts expressed through the relationship landscape of nature is emergence. Emergence is a word used to describe new properties that come about as a result of certain relationships. Properties that wouldn't exist if it weren't for the relationship. Everything from the property of wet that emerges from fluids, to tornadoes which emerge from weather patterns, to consciousness and self-awareness that emerge from biology, are included in this concept. The properties of salt is new and different from the properties of sodium and chlorine from which it is made. This combination of relationships is the source of novelty and is at the heart of what sustains complex systems. The question of whether emergence is a description of properties or an explanation is disputed in some circles. The suggestion that self-awareness is emergent seems to describe the property resulting from human biological processes, but this doesn't mean it fully explains it. Using emergence, we can say what happened, but to meaningfully predict what and when properties will come about seems outside our grasp at the moment. Emergence is a descriptive word. Its inability to reliably and precisely predict anything arguably reveals its deficiency as an explanatory model. Solar systems emerge. Water emerges out of the relationship between hydrogen and oxygen. All relationships carry emergent properties in the backdraft of their existence. Some of these emergent properties are remarkable, generating whole new levels of organization, including dynamic, self-sustaining processes employing vast, interconnected, and delicate dances of self-similar and differential patterns that dynamically maintain themselves in some coherent form over time. This is the emergent mystery we find ourselves in. To be human, to be alive, to be biological, means to participate in this quest for continuation over time, and cultivating nourishing relationships toward this end is the key. In the case of emergence, the brute fact remains all relationships generate emergent properties. If there's no predictive capacity embedded in the notion of emergence, this doesn't mean it's not useful. It does mean that it's not effective as a tool to predict outcomes, but it clearly provides us with an incentive to search for those combinations of relationships that can serve to nourish and maintain our biological form over time. As self-aware creatures, we have the capacity to be gardeners of the relationships that can either nourish us, be apathetic in relationship to us, or poison and destroy us, depending on their emergent properties. The message that emerges from the relational system that is nature makes it clear that it is up to us to pursue the climate of relationships that are aimed at developing our fullest experience of life. To apply our energies to anything less is to rob ourselves of that opportunity, and this, more than anything else, is a clue to one of the biggest questions. What can we do to craft a better world?